Can you just elaborate on that for my viewers, on the difference between holding fiat currency and looking at some digital currencies like Bitcoin and the effect that it can have?
Governments and economists around the world will try to make inflation sound like this very complex formula. What really inflation is the expansion. What is to inflate something? And how does that currency supply inflate or expand? It's through credit creation, or in our government's case, they rack up massive deficits because they tax us within an inch of our life, but they still can't run a budget surplus. For me, I don't need my alternative to be perfect. I don't need my alternative to be flawless. What I need my alternative to be is accessible and something that allows me to protect myself from inflation. Cost of living is going up. Yes, asset prices are going to be going up. What is most likely going to hold your value well over time is the fastest horse in the race.
And one thing that just stood out in my mind is don't try to time the market, just be in the market. What's some of the craziest trades you've ever done?
Yeah, I had a client at the 2021 bull run who was sitting on about $10 million worth of Ethereum.
The information provided is for general information and educational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. You should consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment or financial decisions. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Scottie G Show. Now, no offense to any of my previous guests, but I am really excited today because this is a topic that I personally have been educating myself about, trying to learn as much as I can about this. I am by no means an expert in this area, hence why I've brought Bisher along from Stormrake. Bisher, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, man. I love your setup. I love the ingenuity of it, and the design is amazing. So congratulations on the fit out.
Thank you, man. It's just a little startup that I've decided to do as a little passion project. We'll see how it goes. You are one of the first to be interviewed on the Scottie G Show, so I'm learning as I go along, but I'm bringing on really interesting, exciting people sharing stories and innovative adventures and all sorts of stuff, and I'm really enjoying it. So we'll see where it goes. So Bisher, tell me a little bit about Stormrake. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you started, what did you do previous, what does Stormrake do?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. So to explain what we do, we're a full service crypto broker. People come to us to do all manner of transactions, to buy, sell and swap Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies through a simple phone call or email. We wanted to bring in an old world service for a new world asset class. There's plenty of platforms out there, and not to knock or disparage them, they do a great job. But for a lot of people who are new to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and Ethereum and XRP, and like there's all these names and tokenization, staking, there's like so many terms that get bandied about, and they're like,
I'm still learning too, man.
Yeah, which is cool, and I'm all for the journey. So what we wanted to do is build an actual service rather than a platform, because there's even platforms that you can borrow, rent or buy off the shelf and then white label it, and then there you go. If you get the appropriate licensing, you can be a crypto exchange.
And obviously they're putting a margin on, and that's
margin, spreads, price premiums, all that kind of stuff. So we thought, let's actually turn the model on its head. Let's have a service first business. We do have a platform, of course, but we wanted every single one of our clients to be assigned a personal crypto broker who is knowledgeable in the space, can help them with any manner of transactions that they're looking to complete, whether it's just a simple spot Bitcoin investment, or whether they're looking to sell Ethereum, or they're looking to swap their XRP into, say, Solana. Yep. We can help them out. We do have an asset management fund as well, where clients can get allocated and have us manage the day-to-day trading without it being particularly tax inefficient, because say, for example, you're buying and selling on an active basis, you're incurring all of these capital gains tax events. Whereas if you invest in the asset management fund, you're more so just having exposure to that one unit trust, price as it appreciates over time. But we always advocate primarily for a spot Bitcoin position, and buy and hold Bitcoin, but not just hold it and look at it like some sort of digital collectible. Actually use Bitcoin in your day-to-day life, whether it be folding it into your business as payments, or where they're using it overseas. I'm chronically, I love using Bitcoin, like personally, because a lot of people have this HODL mentality. HODL is great, but we're trying to get people to see the benefit of a decentralized currency. So Stormrake, in essence, is a full service broker and asset manager.
Yep.
My background, let's say goes back to when I was 21, because before that, I was just doing a bunch of odd jobs. I sold solar panels door to door, sold suits. I helped my uncle out in his fruit and veg grocery business, typical Lebanese type of business to have, to be honest. And we had a lot of fun. So I learned how to, manage inventory and move product from a very young age, but it wasn't something I was particularly passionate about. And I fell into foreign exchange when I was 21, and that kind of started my financial services career. I learned a lot because crypto is incredibly volatile and moves a lot. But when you're dealing with 500 to 1 leverage, for example, which is what we used to offer back in the FX days, that's crazy. Like a 3-point move and you can be completely wiped out or make a fortune is just craziness. So I got to learn a lot about how to manage volatility, how to manage downside risk, how to build up a client book. And then I took that experience into crypto back in 2019 and started up my own firm in 2022. So it's been a bit of a journey over the years, but lots of mistakes along the way, as you could imagine.
Sure.
But each mistake strengthened the business. Each mistake helped me learn a little bit more about how to manage risk, how to mitigate risk, and how to focus on the upside and deliver that to our clients as well. So.
Yep. Well, little story about me onto how I got onto Stormrake, because I'm actually a client of Stormrake. I was one of those guys, and anyone who watches this pod knows that I'm very, very obviously focused on my business, my day-to-day business. We do commercial kitchen fit-outs. I'm focused on my property, but I started to think about diversification. Started to listening to guys like you. Shout out to the guys at Unemployable, do a fantastic job. Adam and Mark and the team there, and Eric, they do a great job. I started buying a little bit of Bitcoin in COVID. People are at home, they're bored, they're investigating. So I was starting to, and I started using one of those bigger platforms that you were talking about. Then as time went on, now I wish I bought a lot more during COVID.
Naturally, we all did. I wish I did too.
So I heard you on Adam's show, jumped onto the Stormrake website, booked in a call, which was with you as well. Got onboarded. Your team is fantastic. And I got to give a shout out to your team. They're absolutely amazing. I send an email, they get back to me always within sort of an hour. Within an hour, generally, it's always a lot faster, but within an hour, I get a response. I get phone calls to say that, some money's been processed into my Stormrake account, whatever it may be. So that's my little story on how I got involved with Stormrake, and I've been loving it. I love that personalized service that I've got someone to listen to. I'm not real good at sitting and reading emails, so I listen to the little morning note.
Yeah, awesome. That's what I like to hear.
Alex, I think.
Yeah, Alex is my research analyst.
Yeah, he's great.
Yep.
Sums it all up for me. I prefer to listen to it
as you should,
than to read. Now, when I've listened to you in the past, you talk about obviously Bitcoin and crypto is volatile, but volatile to the good, right? So what was that holy shit moment for you where you just went, I'm all in on Bitcoin? Because when I hear you talk, it's Bitcoin. Like, yes, there's other stuff out there, but it's Bitcoin. What was that moment for you?
Like I started dabbling in Bitcoin, and I bought a little bit in 2016. The really big moment for me that opened up my eyes to it was there was a little cafe vendor that was starting to accept Bitcoin back in 2018. This was after...
In Melbourne?
In Melbourne, yeah. And what really resonated with me, this was after the 2017 bull run where we went from like $1,000 to $20,000 on Bitcoin, like a 20x in like 10 months. It was wild. And you could just pretty much pick any altcoin and you 50x your portfolio. Crazy days, right? The market has matured a lot since then. But there was a guy, after all the hype and mania and euphoria of a Bitcoin bull run and the alt season that followed it afterwards, he was accepting Bitcoin. And I had a little bit knocking about in a cold wallet. and I learned how to get myself set up with a hot, because everything was always not your keys, not your coins, not your keys, not your coins.
Yep.
So, I just quickly hurried around, got myself a hardware wallet, and got myself
In putting into cold storage.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And I didn't know how to actually use this asset other than just to buy and hold, right?
Sure.
And so I troubled the guy to ask him, how can I, pay you with Bitcoin? I've got some, and at that time I wasn't looking to sell because I had already bought, sub 1,000 and it ran to 20, and I thought, bang, you beauty, I'm rich. And then it went back down to 3, and I was like, well, I should find out a little bit more about what this is now. And so yeah, that was really an eye-opening. It wasn't like this crazy epiphany moment. It was just like, there is so much more to this than just a speculative asset that I could invest in and hopefully it runs to the moon. There is a part of it which is, yes, I don't want to put my capital in things that is going to go down, and I do want my assets value to appreciate over time. But it's the utility, it's the freedom that I could be able to at any time transact with anyone without any restriction was really eye-opening, because if it's just a cup of coffee, the bank isn't going to sneeze at it, right? But if you're looking to make a $100,000 transfer, for whatever reason, you've decided to either it's an investment or a purchase of some degree or property, whatever it could be, right? The amount of 6th degree that you get from your bank and the difficulty that you get in terms of dealing with them is just outrageous. And little known fact is that when you deposit funds into a commercial bank account, CBA, ANZ, Westpac, NAB, doesn't matter which one it is, you become what is known as an unsecured creditor, which was like something where I was like, if I could just use Bitcoin, I completely cut out all of that counterparty risk. I don't become an unsecured creditor. I am the holder of my own assets and my funds, and I become my own bank. So I was like, and I could use it to pay for a cup of coffee, go for a holiday, convert it into local currencies wherever it may need to be converted. And I was like, there is something here more than just an asset class where number go up, right? And that's what really made me fall in love with it.
Speaking of the banks being difficult, I tried to make a payment into my Stormrake account. So did my usual EFT transaction as I normally do. I bank with one of the big 3. All of a sudden I start getting all these pop-ups. Is this a scam? Do you know this person? I started, and look, I have no problem with the bank doing those things because there's people getting scammed all the time. So anyway, answered all the questions. Yes, I've dealt with this before. Yes, I've spoken to them. Yes, I've checked the bank account, etc., etc. No problems. First it cancels. Then I do it again. Then it goes through. Then I get a phone call. We think there's some scam activity. Can you verify this? I said yes. I said Stormrake is an accredited crypto broker. I said, you can look it up yourself. Yes, it's a legitimate company. I've dealt with them before. I'm already trading with them on a personal level. This was through my business. I said, I'm already trading with them on a personal level. Got no concerns whatsoever. They said, no problems. We'll process that for you now. Day 1, day 2, day 3. I ring your office. Have you guys seen the money yet? And they're like, no, hasn't come through yet. Maybe just check again. They cancelled it. They did not process it. So anyway, I went in again, transferred again, and it worked the next time. But yeah, the banks are funny about this.
Yeah, big time. And it's look, we were talking about it a little bit off air before, but whilst I don't excuse their behavior, I do understand and somewhat sympathize with the banks, because I'll explain why, right? The legislators in Canberra, completely inept, right? I'm happy to say that on the record. And what they've done is they have completely washed their hands of our industry, right? There was an opportunity for Australia to be a leading country within the digital asset space, squandered it. The United States has taken that lead now and going to be a leader in the digital asset economy, right? And we've completely fallen behind because the legislators haven't put forward legislation, nor have they put forward any regulatory changes, because at the moment, within Australia at least, Bitcoin and other digital assets sit as an unregulated asset class. And there's all these suggestions about how they're going to regulate it, all these guidelines. We're going to put an AFSL, which is an Australian Financial Services license that should, stop the cowboys, which I don't mind. I'd much rather have a registered financial services provider doing what I do. currently we're Austrac registered as a digital currency exchange. Austrac has come out and said that they'll put together a register so that banks and clients alike can verify who holds these credentials.
Right.
But none of it is actually being accelerated, right?
Yeah.
And so we're really in a really tough spot where the legislators and the regulators don't want to touch us. They don't want to look at us. They don't even want to know that we exist, right? They come and put together a digital asset committee once every 6-8 weeks, look like they're doing something, and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then what that ends up pushing is it kicks the can down the road, and then it falls in the bank's lap to become the legislator or the regulator to police these transactions.
Yep.
Because there's no way for the bank to then say and verify which is a legitimate institution
Yep.
and what isn't, and which one is portraying themselves as a fraudulent institution or is it going offshore. There's no way for them to check that out. And so it falls on them to have to, every transaction, try to be discerning as to
Super diligent.
Are their customers being scammed, or are they dealing with a legitimate organization? There's no framework for that. And so that's where the difficulty lies. But I'm not here to excuse them, because the banks also are fractionally reserved. To all those who are listening at home, fractional reserve is where you put in $100,000 in deposits and they can lend it out 1 million times over, literally $1 million, right? That they can lend out and create credit out of thin air. So you can, if you like the look of $1 million property in regional Victoria, and you want to go out and buy it, the bank only needs to have $100,000 in deposits in order to lend out those funds, in which they then get to earn interest on.
Yes.
And they pay you 3.5-4% for the privilege of lending out your own money. So it's not an institution I'm particularly fond of, and that's why I advocate for Bitcoin.
Well, on that point, my mates are sick of me talking about Bitcoin, right? So I'm that guy that knows like this much out of this much, but I talk to them like I'm like the expert.
Join us for a pub dinner. We don't stop talking about it.
That's it. So that's me now. Like I went camping last weekend. Perfect opportunity, right?
Everyone can't go anywhere.
They can't go anywhere. We're sitting around a campfire. Guess what? Scottie was talking about Bitcoin the whole time. I was like, oh, here he goes again. But they're going to get it. They're going to get it. Now, I try to explain, and you're going to elaborate and explain it so much better than I do. I try to explain the real simple mathematics of this, that our fiat currency, our AUD that our money comes into in our wages or our business, sits in a bank account, whether you invest it in a term deposit and get the 3-4%, or whether you leave it there in your bank account, it is constantly going down in value. Going down in value because everything is going up in price, and going down in value because the money printer starts churning again, and our money is just worth less and less and less. And I keep trying to explain this. Maybe I don't do a very good job of it, but can you just elaborate on that for my viewers, on the difference between holding fiat currency and looking at some digital currencies like Bitcoin and the effect that it can have?
Yeah, it's one of my most favorite questions and topics to really unpack, because it's a really big rabbit hole that we can go into. So what Scott has just so eloquently described is what is known as inflation, right? In simple terms. Now, governments and economists around the world will try to make inflation sound like this is very complex formula, and that there's a lot of things that they go in there to dissect. And it's just, what really inflation is the expansion. What is to inflate something? It is the expansion of the money supply, the underlying currency supply. And how does that currency supply inflate or expand? Is through credit creation, or in our government's case, they rack up massive deficits because they tax us within an inch of our life, but they still can't run a budget surplus. So what do when they have this $500 billion deficit? They print the rest. That creates more Aussie dollars in circulation, and then that causes the cost of goods and services to go up because there's more Aussie dollars bidding on the same good or service, or loaf of bread, bottle of milk. It all goes up. And so that is what is essentially, in a nutshell, the cost of living crisis that you keep hearing on Channel 9 or Channel 7. And what they keep missing and keep forgetting is that they are the cause of the cost of living crisis. They try to, slap it on greedy corporations and, greedy businesses that, are hiking up their prices. It's like, I know you as a business owner, I know myself as a business owner, my cost of goods are going up through the roof, right? It's not getting cheaper. Rent's getting more expensive. Everything's just going up and up and up. Insurance, all these costs just keep increasing. And why are their costs increasing is because there's more Aussie dollars in supply. And so to try to throw it onto greedy corporations and greedy business owners is a bit of a throwaway distraction from the government to really say, look, we're the cause of all of this. We're printing so much currency at the moment that naturally cost of goods and services increase, inflation goes through the roof. And whilst cost of living crisis is real, we have kind of mitigated some of that because asset prices have also been inflating. People's property values have been increasing, so they don't feel as poor. So whilst there is, their dollars get them less in the shop, but because they're sitting on what is 2.3, 2.5, $3 million in equity on a home that they bought for a packet of fish and chips back in the day, they feel rich, right? But they don't realize the same forces that are causing their asset price to increase exponentially is also what's causing the cost of goods and services to increase exponentially as well. So how do we avoid being caught up in this rat race? Where is an alternative? This is where Bitcoin, in particular, I know that digital currencies and cryptocurrencies in general can sometimes get lumped in, but this is where Bitcoin in particular comes in as a knight in shining armor and gives us an alternative. And as an alternative, it doesn't need to be flawless. It doesn't need to be perfect. A lot of people nitpick at certain things in Bitcoin's history, creation, supply, volatility. But for me, I don't need my alternative to be perfect. I don't need my alternative to be flawless. What I need my alternative to be is accessible and something that allows me to protect myself from, inflation, but also gives me a means of exchange which is separate from the issuance of government-backed currency. And that it really just is succinctly wrapped up in Bitcoin. So whilst, yes, cost of living is going up, yes, asset prices are going to be going up, what is most likely going to hold your value well over time is the fastest horse in the race. And there are many assets that will do well, of course, gold, silver, equities, even the stock market, particularly in the US, has done exceptionally well. But Bitcoin has outperformed all of them over the last 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4, 5 years. There are pockets of underperformance where there's huge volatility, but volatility is the price you pay for massive upside.
And you've said it before, it's volatile for the good, right?
Yeah.
And I remember listening to one of your YouTube videos. I think you were a keynote speaker at one of the crypto or Bitcoin events. I don't know which one it was. And one thing that just stood out in my mind is don't try to time the market, just be in the market.
Welcome to Stormrake Crypto Brokers, your trusted partner in digital assets. We make crypto investing simple, secure, and tailored to you. From individuals and family offices to businesses and institutions, we deliver sharp pricing, deep liquidity, and customized service. With Stormrake, you'll always have a dedicated team on your side. Stormrake, empowering your crypto journey.
So for those of you who don't know what that means is we can constantly be trying to buy at the lowest rate, right? Which is extremely difficult. Sure, we can buy on a little dip and we feel good because we bought it at a little dip. But when we're talking about 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we're really not talking about much, are we? That tiny little change that we see long term is not going to make a hell of a difference. Now, what's some of the craziest trades you've ever done? Have you ever had someone try to ring you up in the middle of the night, or have you tried to get some deal done that was just crazy? Any good stories?
Yeah, I had a client at the 2021 bull run who was sitting on about $10 million worth of Ethereum, right? And it was around that 4,800 peak. And he was really wanting to get his Ethereum into Bitcoin when he thought that it was the end of the bull run. And so we kept in touch all the time, probably every 2-3 days we'd have a phone call because he was seeing his Ethereum price just pump and pump and pump. He went all in at the bear market low and just kept buying. Eventually his cost basis was somewhere around, $400K. and he was sitting on a $10 million position. So he was sitting on a $9.6 million AUD profit. And he was like, mate, this is life-changing money. I said, no, mate, you've made wife-changing money.
I like that.
Don't let my wife hear this. But it went really well. And he's like, when should I cash out? When should I cash out? I said, listen, dude, you could take out half right now and just let the other half run, and we can just see what happens.
Yeah.
And it hit 4,800, and it was starting to come back down. And he's an Aussie guy, right? So there was no reason for him to be calling me at the middle of the night. And then at 2 a.m., my phone starts buzzing. And I'm like, that's unusual, because I'd never get phone calls at a time, unless it's from like my mom or like my siblings, or they just, some sort of emergencies happen. So I went to go answer it, saw his name. I go, g'day mate, what's happening? Why are you calling me today? He's like, I need to sell right now. And I'm like, oh shit. I had to fire up the laptop, find some exchanges. He was moving some decent size, and because you got to keep in mind, ETH, although it's a global asset, it trades in pairs: ETH AUD, ETH USD, ETH Euro, depending on which currency you'll offload.
Yep.
And at 2 a.m. there was like decent liquidity for the ETH AUD pair. So I started calling up some of my OTC or over-the-counter providers to find them a great rate.
Yep.
And we were able to offload about 5.2 million at that time.
Wow.
Straight into the market with minimal slippage. And then he was like, okay, that's it. Because he wanted to take half of the position off.
Yep.
And I said to him, listen, but next time, just give me a call at 8 a.m. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
it's not going to make that much.
Not going to make that much of a difference. But no, he was absolutely wrapped. And same day settlement.
Actually, I shouldn't say that. At those kind of numbers, maybe it could make a huge difference.
It would actually. But no, I said to him, like, you know, if you're planning on these kind of trades, like, you know, don't. A lot of the times I've learned a lot about the psychology of investing and trading over the last decade. Yep. And, you know, people will, you know, put 1 foot in, 1 foot out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Oh, I think it's got more to go. So should I sell something?
It gets emotional, doesn't it?
Really emotional. I said, like, and that's why I gave him that like really calm, rational advice, because he was looking to sell. Like, he just came to me and said, I want to sell, right? But when should I sell? It's always one of the questions. When should I buy? When should I sell? Yep. Right? And I say, look, rather than trying to time the market, right? You've spent the time in the market now, right? Here's what we do. Let's reduce half of your exposure and then let the other half run. And if it just so happens to continue to pull back, at least you got sold half at a really good rate. And that's exactly what happened. You know, he didn't get the maximum 10.1 million that it was worth at the time. We ended up cashing him out for like 9.3, but still a huge success nonetheless. And he came back into the market a lot later, and he goes, I can't do this kind of stuff anymore. And I said, what do you want to do? He goes, I said, just buy Bitcoin and keep it easy. And he goes, okay, yeah, no worries. So we managed to get half of that position. So he went out, he got himself a new home, did all kinds of crazy things with it, went for a holiday. Like, this guy was loving life. And then we ended up going to buy him about 5 mil of Bitcoin, and it was around 25K just before the FTX collapse happened in 2022. Mm-hmm. And then it went from like 24-ish K all the way back down to 15. And he was like, again,
stressing hard.
Gave me a call in a panic. It was this guy is a good friend now, but you know, we cashed him out, made him wealthier beyond his dreams, and then on the way back in, we didn't get the absolute bottom. You know what I mean? Imagine buying Bitcoin at 25,000 US. How good would that be, right? Yep. We're trading at 115,000 now, right? It would have been more of a 4x return in literally less than 2 years. That's magic. Right?
Where else can you do that?
Where else can you do that? Exactly. So I turned around to him and I said, look, if you want to sell right now, how about this? Go make yourself a cup of tea. Wait half an hour. Give me a call back. If you wish to sell in 30 minutes, I'll pull the trigger for you, no problems, right? He goes away, comes back, he's had his cup of tea, he's relaxed, he goes, I don't think it's wise to sell right now. I said, I thought so as well. Like, let's just take it easy, man. Like, don't make emotional decisions. If you wish to sell because of a rational decision, you know, you need liquidity, you need to fund some other purchase, you're going into another asset class, that's different. You're making a rational, informed investment decision. But if you're just purely reacting on the price going up or down, I have, as a broker, I have a responsibility to kind of just say, oh, slow your horses. Right? We can buy and we can sell. I'll get paid either way, right? I'll get a 2% transaction fee. Doesn't matter whether you get the trade call right or wrong. So I say, look, let's take the emotion out of the investing decision. and then go from there. So those would be probably some of the crazy stories, but there's all these little things that kind of come up that, escape you on the day-to-day, which is just crazy, because now I've been doing this for close to 6 years. So there's not a lot that kind of stands out as something that's like, you come in, it's chaos, you you solve problems all day, and then you call it.
But this is what I love about the broker service, because the larger platforms are there, and a lot of people, I suppose, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably when someone's first getting in, they probably just go straight to one of the larger ones online that they see or their friend tells them about, and they don't know about the broker service. Yeah. And this is why I want to talk about your services, because for me, it's made a huge difference to have someone to talk to, another human being in Australia. I can bounce things off. I can, get some recommendations, do the trades for me. Nowhere near the size and capacity of the story that you just told, but hopefully one day.
Very soon, my friend.
Mine seem really, really insignificant now up here. Now, you touched on before fees and spreads and things like that. Can you just touch on that? Because obviously now I'm no longer with that platform, now dealing 100% with you guys. When I buy from you, I pay a fee on the trade. Yep. Okay, and then it's my choice whether I store it with you and pay a storage fee or put it into my own cold wallet. Can you just touch on when you talk about fees and spreads and things like that?
Yeah, so I oftentimes forget that not everybody has spent 10 years trading and don't explain things or slow things down. So spread is the distance between the buy price and the sell price that on any asset. It's not just about Bitcoin, right? So if you're a buyer, you're trying to do what? You're trying to buy at the lowest price possible. And if you're a seller, you're trying to sell at the highest price possible. And so when you go to all of these exchanges, whether you're dealing with stocks or crypto or real estate even, the marketplace is what allows these buyers and sellers to meet, whether it's on the ASX or on a crypto exchange, to then be able to trade value with each other. And so what these spreads are is essentially, sometimes it's actually hidden spreads. What I mean by that is the buyer might be willing to buy Bitcoin at 180,000 flat, and the seller is willing to sell it at 180,100. So if the buyer moves up a little bit, then it clears and the trade order is matched off. What the exchanges do is they actually artificially inflate the spreads, and they have what is known as a price premium, so that they know that the buyer will have to come up a lot more to buy from there. And then when they're a seller, they actually lower the price a lot more so that they can capture on both sides, both on the buyer and on the seller. Mm-hmm. So those hidden costs, which are not promoted and not something that a lot of people are aware of, and we haven't even touched on what slippage is. Slippage is when you see, you want to buy one Bitcoin, for example, and you see a price of 180,000, but that might only accommodate $10,000 worth of purchase order, right? That you can't buy the entire one Bitcoin at 180K, which is the price that you see. There might be only enough for, $10,000. So by the time you fill your entire order, you're at 180,700, for example. Uh-huh. And that's known as slippage, because you thought you were here, but really to fill the entire order, you're up here. So between slippage, spreads, and price premiums, there's a lot of hidden costs that the average investor isn't going to be across. And so as a brokerage house, that's our responsibility to minimize slippage, because that is a function of the market. You don't know exactly where everything is, but what we have is fixed price execution. So thanks to a lot of our OTC counterparties, we'll say we want to buy 2 Bitcoin at market. They'll give us a fixed price, and we'll know exactly where we are relative to the current market price. The market price isn't always the execution price. Sometimes there's a difference there. And so we get to come in right to where the market price is, within like a couple of bips, like the tiniest razor thin margins. And then we charge a 2% fee for services rendered. And then, as you mentioned, the client can then choose to either hold the assets with us. Yep. And there is an element of counterparty risk there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You just need to know who your counterparties are and make sure that you're dealing with a reputable firm and reputable institution. What we do is we give our clients as well a little added layer of security and peace of mind. So you can log into your client portal, see your Bitcoin public wallet address, and view your holdings. So let's say, hypothetically, you've got 2 Bitcoin with Stormrake. You could log in, copy the wallet address, and paste it into a Bitcoin public explorer, which allows you to view blockchain history and transactions and wallets. That's the whole point of a public ledger. Because it's pseudonymous, because it'll just be a long string of alphanumeric text, that doesn't mean it's not tied to your identity or persons.
Right.
But you'll copy it and you'll see that you've got 2 Bitcoin, which matches the holdings report of the portfolio that we've issued you. So there's no variance or discrepancy there, so you can go sleep comfortably. Sure. Then the next layer above that is you can go down the self-custody route where you learn to how to hold your own assets.
What are some mistakes people make in that area?
Oh, I'll tell you one of my own.
Yeah.
Right? So one thing that I did is back in the day and this is a very expensive mistake, my dear friend, very expensive. So back in the day when you used to be able to they copy and paste these wallet addresses, which think of them as like a BSB and account number, right? They're unique to yourself. And you can send funds to a public wallet address, but you can't pull funds out of it without the private.
That's still the way you do it now, right? You give you a copy and like you put it onto your Trezor or whatever. Yeah, whatever
exactly.
you got. Yep.
Exactly. But back when I was, getting started in Bitcoin and crypto, that little handy clipboard icon at the end of a wallet address, you just can click on it and copies the entire text for you. I had to drag my mouse across to copy the wallet address. I left off the last character. And in crypto land, that's like a big no-no because it's just going.
It's not going to get there.
It's not going to. It's going to go into
it's putting the wrong BSB and account number
with no bank to call on,
and no one to say recall this.
But that's the beauty of Bitcoin is that you cannot go back and undo a transaction. Once it's sent, it's fine.
With everything bad comes the good as well, right?
Correct. And so I missed the character. Sent it off into what I thought was my exchange account at the time because I was actively holding assets on my end and I'd look to sell and buy and all that kind of stuff because I was all in from a very early stage. So I never had any AUD funds. So I need to constantly be selling to just like, not the whole stack, but small portions. Back then I lost nearly 2 Bitcoin in the transaction. It cost me about $4,000 at the time. I was like, shit, I've lost $4,000, man. I was kicking myself. I was like, whatever, it's 4K, I'll leave it.
Got to move on, can't get it back.
Whatever. That is now a $360,000 mistake. So I still look at that transaction from time to time and I'm like, well, but I put it out of my mind. So a lot of the times people make mistakes in sending it. So what we do is test transfers,
Yep, I was just about to say, I've experienced it.
Yep, so.
And it made me feel better.
Yeah.
Can I just say, because, and I'm not dealing with the big numbers you were talking about before, but just that little amount goes in and then I call or respond and say, yep, received it. And then I just know that the main bulk amount hasn't gone through. They've just done a little test.
And you'll be surprised, like we process millions of dollars worth of withdrawals every single day. And we do this small $1, $2 test transfer every time. We pick up 3 or 4 that would have otherwise, if we were just to go full send straight away, 3 or 4 a day where the client could have lost $500,000, $200K, $300K. Yeah. So we're really diligent about that stuff. And, you don't have to make that really expensive $360,000 mistake because I've already done that. So I've done all I've made the wrong mistakes. I've overtraded. I've traded with leverage. I got caught up in NFTs and all kinds of other distractions. When I look at my portfolio, if I was just to be buying and holding Bitcoin only over that time, I would have been far better off.
But we live and learn, right?
We live and learn. And that's why I love the brokerage service is that I can share my experiences, my mistakes with my clients and help you avoid common pitfalls, and not get too fearful, not to get too greedy. Funny story of getting too fearful. I had a client of mine when there was recently in June, the Middle Eastern conflict between Iran and Israel was kicking off. And he gave me a call in a panic. He goes, I think this is it. I think World War III is about to kick off. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, all right, let's unpack that for a little bit. I said, one of 2 things are either going to happen. World War III does not happen. And you wish you would have bought more Bitcoin when it had that dip off those fears. Yep. Or 2, World War III does happen and it doesn't matter anyway because we're all fucked. Right? And he's like, you know what?
Well put.
Yeah, he was like, you're right. Like, I was like, you're being irrational. You know what I mean? Like, if there's going to be a nuclear Armageddon, don't worry. Like, you're not going to get any prices on Bitcoin, stocks, real estate. It's going to be all irrelevant. We're going to go into a nuclear winter, which I said is on the balance of probabilities, close to zero, right? You got more likelihood of being hit by a car, God forbid. So I said, yeah, just be bullish, right? And then at times when people are being too greedy and they're trading with leverage and they're chasing crazy gains or whatever it may be, I'll say, look, why don't we look at having a bit more of a balanced approach? Still can chase those crazy upside returns because if they pan out, they pan out. But let's bring back some conservatism into the portfolio. So, I'm not always just this massive bull, buy, mega bull all the time. I like to try to have a bit of a balanced approach. So that way we can maximize the results. We're not going to necessarily hit it out of the park every time because you have that little bit more of a conservative approach, but it means that you can stay in the game long enough to accumulate wealth so that you're not taking on too much risk.
Yeah, and I remember you saying in another podcast I was listening to, we may not in the future see these huge ups and huge downs, but we might see, like the stock market, the up and to the right, which I heard you talking about the other day, which should give a little bit of comfort to people to know that, yes, the volatility is always going to be there, but we're looking at something that is just history. It's not my opinion. History is showing the trajectory is going up. All right, and it's going that way. Now, my dad, 76 years old, migrant from Italy.
Which part?
So dad's from Rome, and mum's from Sicily.
I've always wanted to visit Sardinia. And it's not too far from there, so we've got to catch up after this.
Absolutely.
Get some tips.
Now, I'm a property guy because dad's a property guy. That's how I was raised. So he would buy property, he would develop property, and that's how I got into the development scene. Now, how do you explain to a 76-year-old about Bitcoin, okay? Because I've had this conversation with him a few times and I think he just glazes over and he says, see that property over there? I can touch it, I can see it. And I said, yeah, but Dad, but we've got landlord issues, we've got maintenance issues, we've got to keep fixing the building, we've got land tax, we got this, we got that. Just nothing there. How do you explain it to the boomers? How do you explain it to the older generation? What is it? It's intangible. What's a simple explanation?
It is intangible. So there's two things here that we got to get right out of the get-go. So I've been trying to explain Bitcoin to my beloved family for the last 10 years. I've been in this space since 2000.
I thought I was bad. You would be 10 times worse.
And so when I first started talking to them about it, they literally looked at me like I had horns coming out of my head. And so I haven't got there quite yet. There's a lot of my own family members, especially the older generation. I started talking about that Bitcoin and their eyes glaze over. What you just described, it's a universal thing. The best thing I do try to explain is that we deal in intangible assets all the time, right? Whether it be the internet or telecommunications or whatever it is, eventually we've recorded this, but then it's going to get pushed out onto the social media sphere. And we've got this snapshot in time that then just goes out, and it's just this wonderful piece of technology, but it's all intangible, right? How the distribution works, Wi-Fi signals, all that kind of stuff, data streaming, all it is intangible. Now, with the same as Bitcoin, the asset itself is an intangible asset, but it has a lot of physical, real-world infrastructure around it. Whether we're talking about Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin nodes, these are real physical infrastructure, real computers, real energy goes in to power the Bitcoin network the whole way through.
And they're always cross-checking each other on multiples across the world, is it?
You can have a Bitcoin node in your warehouse, you can have a Bitcoin node at your home, and they're all always cross-checking and referencing that we all have the same ledger, so that there's no double spend or no fraudulent transactions.
And sorry, I don't want to cut you off and I don't want to change your train of thought, but something really important for those that don't know a lot about Bitcoin is they're not creating more. There's only 21 million of them, all right? And when there is only a scarcity of something, it always goes up. Demand goes up, the supply is limited, there's only 21 million of them. They're not going to print more.
Exactly.
So, sorry to cut you off.
No, it's a great point, and that's why it's so important to have this real-world physical infrastructure, this real-world energy that goes into powering the Bitcoin network, that whilst the asset itself, the currency itself is intangible, we should take people to a Bitcoin mining warehouse. There's a couple spotted along Melbourne that I know of, but they probably wouldn't want people, just tourists walking in and out. But at the end of the day, there's real physical infrastructure there. So whilst you might not be able to trade or touch the underlying asset, there is genuine energy, there is genuine infrastructure that goes towards powering this entire network.
I tried to put it real simply to him, and I said, today, 2025, you order your coffee, everyone double taps their phone and just taps from their bank account. I said, let's just fast forward, and I could be wrong here, but let's just fast forward 5 years, okay? Let's say now it's like super normal for Aussies to have a Bitcoin account where they can transfer their Bitcoin into AUD and pay for the coffee, or pay for directly Bitcoin for that coffee. I said, don't you think as the demand increases, the rate will continue to go up? And he's sort of like, yeah, but still can't see it. You know, what's the blockchain? What are you talking about, blockchain? You know what I mean? It's a real difficult conversation to have. But he's like, look, Scott, if you want to do it, you do it. I said, he's like, I'm at the point in my life where I've done what I've had to do. Now this is a new thing. If you want to invest in it, go for it. And look, we have, even through the business, we have actually been investing through the business as well in Bitcoin through Stormrake, of course. So it's one of those difficult things, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But you know, it's why I there is a technology aspect to it that does require. It's known as the S diffusion adoption curve, which is essentially a fancy way of saying how does technologies get adopted over time. Whether we're talking about radio, we're talking about television, we're talking about the internet. You know, they all follow a very similar trajectory where there's early adopters that come in, you know, the innovators that just see it early. Then there's the early majority, which is where I believe where we are now, which is it's not.
And we are still early. When people say, "Oh, I've missed the boat," we're still early.
We're still incredibly early. We're in that early majority period of that adoption curve where, you know, back in the day, you didn't have a television in every home, you didn't have internets in everyone's home, but you'd start seeing it popping up here and there. You know, and eventually now there's a television in everyone's home, internet is accessible everywhere. You sit down in a cafe, what's the Wi-Fi password? It's just everywhere, right? That's the same thing that's going to happen with Bitcoin, is that we are in that, you know, growth trajectory, that growth discovery phase where a lot of new entrants are coming into understanding this technology and this asset class. And so then as they invest into it, the price naturally increases over time. You nailed it on the head when you said limited supply, right? 21 million, which is a maximum fixed supply, which, to give you an understanding of the difference, gold has a limited supply, but it doesn't have a theoretical maximum supply, right? It can, with new technology, we can mine more gold. You know, there's gold on these big asteroids that has tons and tons of gold. Not that we have the technology to access that anytime soon. It might take hundreds, if not thousands of years to kind of get there. But there is a lot of gold out there, you know, it's just hard to get to. Now, with Bitcoin, there is none of that. It is 21 million Bitcoin, and it cannot be increased or otherwise compromised. So that's what I think is really interesting, is that, you know, there is that difference between fixed supply and maximum supply as well.
So how do you see it happening in the future with paying, say, we'll talk about coffee. So if I'm going to pay for my coffee, do you think it's probably something that Stormrake is obviously looking at as well, is it goes from my AUD account onto my whatever card, which is then transferring it into Bitcoin and then I pay? Or is it people paying directly with their Bitcoin in a different way? Like, how do you see it happening here in Australia or worldwide?
That's a great question. The first line of Bitcoin's white paper, written by Satoshi Nakamoto all these years ago, back in 2008, was a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That's the first part of the entire genesis of this asset class and industry. So my perspective is that Bitcoin will be a form of cash, right? E-cash, if you will, and it will be traded peer-to-peer. So there will be no need to go through an intermediary or anything like that. And I'm not trying to talk myself out of a job. I'm effectively converting people's Bitcoin into Aussie dollars or their Aussie dollars into Bitcoin. That's normal. And I think there'll still be a function for that in the future, as people will want to trade Bitcoin for other currencies, either digital or fiat. You know, there'll always be a market for that, I think. Or Bitcoin for other tokenized assets, whether that be Bitcoin for tokenized real estate, Bitcoin for tokenized shares, or stable coins for Bitcoin. There'll always be that kind of interplay and exchange where we'll have a role to play. But ideally, you're in the commercial kitchen fit out business. The ideal future that I see it heading towards, and that would be a far better than this fiat government issued currency that we call money, which couldn't be further from the truth, is that you bill your client or your customer in Bitcoin and they pay you in Bitcoin directly, instant settlement, job's done. That's the future that I would love to see.
But then the government's going to get their grubby fingers on it some way, aren't they?
Well, that's the thing, is that it is by its very nature an anti-government currency, because they can't actually grab their little fingers on it, right? Yeah. That is part of the purpose of this asset. So no wonder they don't like it. No wonder they.
That's the beauty of it.
That is the beauty of it, right? And then especially in a country like Australia, where we might as well just say it, we're a socialist republic. If more than half of the Australian Electoral Commission is dependent on the government for some sort of benefit, either contracts, supply, like their suppliers to them, or just directly collecting the benefits. We're in a really bad shape as an economy and a country, because we've completely gutted mum and dad businesses. We've gutted entrepreneurship out of this country. And so, the Bitcoin is an alternative to government issued currency, and as such is an alternative to protecting our wealth away from the machinations of an aggressive tax regime.
Yep. And look, we are seeing so many stories of, we talk about Bitcoin sovereignty, right? We talk about people who literally can pick up their cold wallet, be in another country in 24 hours and have their wealth with them in their pocket. And we're seeing that more and more as people are realizing how difficult it is in Australia, to run business overtaxed, overgoverned, all the issues that we're seeing. And this is the beauty of Bitcoin, that you can literally be, you could relocate your life. And, we've heard stories of countries that have, gone through wars, and they've gone through situations where the banks have shut the ATMs, the banks have closed, people could not get their money. Like with Bitcoin, that can't happen. Yep. It cannot happen.
And a country not far from Italy, Greece in 2011, 2012, completely shut people. This isn't ancient history, guys. We're only talking about a little over 14 years ago. Yeah.
This is in our lifetime. Like this is not.
Yeah. I was 17 at the time, 18 at the time, and they didn't allow people to withdraw funds from their bank account, right? Because the country was going through a debt crisis. And they had to go through some structuring with the EU and the International Monetary Fund, which was another pack of criminals, but that's a topic for another time. But yeah, it's not like it's uncommon to hear that you can't access your funds, and it's really important to have that separation of not just the commercial banks but the government, and just be independent. And I don't know when in our history exactly that financial privacy and autonomy became illegal or immoral. It's not right. We need to have access to our own funds. If you work hard, you produce effort, you produce labor, you produce goods and services, you give up your time, whatever it is, and you've earned your income, fair and square, you have 100% entitlement to it. And there should be no one else that can stick their hand in your pocket to take a clip.
And we're hearing of some pretty serious changes in the US government and the way that the US is now treating Bitcoin. I think I heard something along the lines of you can now borrow from your Bitcoin, meaning that it is now considered a real asset, like say, for example, you're trying to get insurance or trying to get a loan. You can say, well, I own this, I own my car, I own my house, but I also have this much in Bitcoin. And that is now considered an asset, which you can now borrow fiat currency or whatever it is against that. So we're seeing a lot of changes. How do you see Australia sort of in the next decade and the adoption rate of Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the Australian public has already, and Australian citizens, we're a smart bunch, right? Can't rule us out. We've adopted this quite naturally. Like a lot of it, like the growth in our business, just because of people wanting to get involved, has been insane. Like, I mean, anyways, not to harp on, but the masses, the people, the public is really invested in this, right? It's not ubiquitous, it's not 100%, but it's increasing. It's somewhere around probably 15 to 25%, if I was to hazard a guess. At least 1 in 4 Australians, 1 in 5 Australians have invested or used cryptocurrency in one way, shape or form, right?
And are we talking higher adoption, say, people in their 20s, for example?
Yeah, naturally, a lot
Yeah.
more people are willing to take risk earlier
Yep.
on, particularly with technology and new asset classes.
But you're also seeing guys like me, they're learning in their 40s. And
Growing cohorts of Bitcoin buyers are over 55s and SMSFs.
wow.
Like by far, one of our most popular products is our SMSF product, where people invest through their self-managed super fund into Bitcoin.
Yep.
A great conversation to have, by the way, to the viewers at home, that if you don't have a self-managed super fund and you're tied up in an industry super fund, get out.
Yeah.
Right? Be self-directed. I'm not saying you have to be 100% Bitcoin, but
But have some control.
have some control. And so, yeah, it'll be great for us to have that conversation. But yeah, it's I would say Australia as the people is very much adopting this asset class and technology really well, far better than I had anticipated. But unfortunately, the government, which is the cohort that I mentioned before, the regulators, the legislators, are just very slow to move. And unfortunately, I think that they've missed the boat on being able to have Australia as a thriving digital economy.
Yep.
The government is too busy debating what a woman is to actually focus on, what actually, how they can actually build a thriving digital asset economy.
Well said. On the SMSF, so self-managed super fund, I have a self-managed. I actually put my self-managed super fund broker in contact with your office, talking to Brody, and they actually were in direct conversation on how we could put a percentage of my portfolio that I was prepared to invest, and we've actually now put that into one of the funds. Yeah. So I'll be sitting back watching that, which is great.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. And it's all worked out really well. I mean, we always focus on results. I think it's very natural in being in financial services. It's all about performance. It's all about outcome. But we want to make sure that we're giving our clients the chance to have informed decisions. So a lot of the times in crypto and in Bitcoin, unfortunately, people misrepresent or exaggerate or have a lot of hyperbole in the way they put things together. But I always focus on why am I so bullish? Like what's like the tangible realities of why am I so hyped? And we've been talking about it extensively over this podcast. But it's not about moon boy predictions that gets me really locked in. It's actually what we've just been discussing, anti-government, anti-bank, but also puts you in the driver's seat of your own assets and the control of your own funds, which I think is very powerful. You can't put a price tag on something like that. A lot of people focus on price. Naturally, I focus on price as well. I'm a broker, but we should be focusing on value. And they're two different things. Something could be worth close to nothing, but it could be invaluable. Our familial relationships, for example, could you put a price tag on that? Of course not. You couldn't put a price tag on your relationship with your children. That is invaluable. So I always try to educate and share that price is not indicative of value.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, the self-managed super fund brokers or financial advisors or accountants, if you had spoken to them, say 5-6 years ago, they'd probably say to you either don't invest in Bitcoin, or they'll either say to you, maybe put 5%, That appetite now is much, much higher. I spoke to my accountant who was very conservative. He is now, you want to put 30, 40% of your, because the track record is there. Yeah. The results are there, and they can start to see it as well. I mean, they've always been very, fiat currency focused, but now they're seeing it as well. Now, I hear about people borrowing against their Bitcoin. Is that something that you're coming across where people will say, well, and like leveraging, you touched on leveraging before. So how does that work?
So it's a great question. And also Bitcoin collateralization, which is what you're talking about, and Bitcoin leverage is a natural evolution of Bitcoin's adoption curve, because as it becomes more and more widely used and ubiquitous, and it's this money perfected, people are going to want to not necessarily sell or dispose of their asset. They're going to want to borrow against it. So for example, you come from property and real estate, you've done well out of it. How can you fund your next residential property build? You put up the previous one, right? Yep. Let's say you've got a 1.2 million in equity in an existing home, and you want to go out and you're going to go into a syndicate with 3-4 of your friends or family. Yep. You want to borrow 600K, you put up the $1.2 million home, you borrow half of it, you've got now 600K to do whatever you want with it. you fund the next project, that increases in equity value, so forth and so forth. And so that's what will happen with Bitcoin, that people will be able to put up their Bitcoin, and it's already happening now. There's actually a couple of Aussie firms that do such a service. Stay tuned for Stormrake. That's something coming down the pipeline as well. But yeah, people will be able to put up their Bitcoin as a collateral asset. You can then borrow against it and do with it as you please. And I think that's a huge development for Bitcoin. Even in, you mentioned it before in passing, but it is actually a massive development. People can use Bitcoin not just as collateral, but it can also be recognized as a part of their asset value in terms of how much borrow you can get from the banks. So that's, I think, is a really powerful place to be. But yeah, Bitcoin leveraging and lending is going to become a bigger and bigger part of the market. But I do urge a lot of the listeners to exercise a lot of caution when it comes to leverage, because whenever you're dealing with a position that is leveraged, you've got to keep in mind of, your equity, how much margin have you got in it. Because of Bitcoin's volatility, you can face a margin call quite quickly, which means you need to top up more funds. You may not have the funds. So there's ways that you can do it and manage it safely and responsibly. And it's best to either speak to a full service broker like ourselves or a licensed credit professional who can help you out with that.
Now, we're running out of time, but I want to ask you another question, non-Bitcoin related. If you could have dinner with one person, who would it be? Anybody in the world, you can have dinner with them. They're 100% yours for a couple of hours to chat. Who would it be?
Dead or alive?
Dead or alive. Let's
Dead
do
or
that.
alive? Okay. I would go with Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan.
If I could speak to him one-on-one and just have dinner and not get killed afterwards, it will be him. Largest land empire ever seen in human history.
Yep.
And was just a simple, cow and sheep herder from the steppes of the Mongol. So, I think that was a really interesting character who, whilst did very terrible things, shaped what is a lot of European, Middle Eastern and Asian history through his own will. So I'd love to learn and pick his brain.
Man, that would be a super interesting dinner.
I'll be very intense, but it'll be a really cool character.
Might be a long lunch and a dinner.
Yeah. But yeah, I've always looked at history as a way for us to be able to learn. And I haven't spent enough time. I used to read a lot, but now with the brokerage in full flight, I'm not reading as much. I'm much like yourself. I'm just chucking things on audiobooks and everything. So yeah, definitely could appreciate that.
Now, for the viewers, in order to get in contact with Stormrake, go on the website, book an appointment. Is that the best way to do it?
Easiest way to do it, because oftentimes when I'm talking in this format, I oftentimes raise more questions than provide answers. And so for people who have specific questions, jump on stormrake.com, go into the contact section and book a consultation. That'll come to myself directly, one of the business owners and managing director. So you'll actually have a chat with somebody who understands the whole aspect of my business. And then the next thing to do is you'll get assigned a broker, much like you've got assigned one yourself, who will be working with you as your dedicated point of contact within the business. I'll always be accessible, of course, but if I'm sitting down in this beautiful podcast and I'm offline for an hour and a bit, you don't want me to be placing a trade and I'm unavailable. So that's why we've got the trade team as well. So, and we've got on the stormrake.com website, you can call us and you just have a yarn, have a chat and discuss what we can do for you.
And I can speak from experience. It's a great service. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on my show. And I also want to congratulate you on what you're doing with Stormrake and the fantastic job that you guys are doing there. You've got a great team. You've just moved into a bigger office space.
Nothing quite like what you've got here. That's 10,000 squares. We're sitting on 400. So yeah, but it is. We're very grateful.
No, congratulations and keep doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Scottie G Show. Please don't forget to like and subscribe so I can keep getting more legends like Bisher on the show to bring their stories and insights on all sorts of different topics. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.